Bill Bender from the Sporting News joining us on the Farm Bureau phone line. Sorry about that, Bill. We had like squirrels in the phone lines or something, and they just went away. You may have just answered the question that I was going to start with. For a while now, we've been hearing $1 billion for the Big Ten contract, and it feels like that number may actually be a little conservative.
Yeah, I mean, it's big money, and this is really what is part of the next iteration of college football is these big money TV deals. And as you know, once the TV deals happen, then you got to think, okay, the conferences will be set for at least a minute unless there's more realignment. There also will be probably more once all this stuff is ironed out, then you start to think, okay, when's the playoff expansion talk? What's that going to look like? What's the AQs look like? And all that kind of stuff. So it's moving, and there's a lot of money in that TV, but I don't think it's going to hurt the interest of the game. I mean, we're getting on that, Richard, it's almost close enough that you can ask me about actual games on the field, and I would be able to answer some of those questions, hopefully.
And we will do that in just a second. I do have one kind of big picture question. We were kind of kicking this around just to start the show. The fabric of college football and the way that we consume it. We've kind of got our routine, right? We wake up and there's game day on, and you've got the other preview shows, and then you go to ESPN for this game and Fox for this game. Is the Big Ten – I know the money is potentially outrageous, and that's what ultimately drives it. But is the Big Ten making a mistake by kind of pulling out of this fabric of college football that is College Game Day and ESPN, and maybe that relationship souring?
Maybe. I mean, there's a risk to that. And again, you said it. I mean, we all have our routines, and the sport is. I keep hearing this, and I think I've said it on your show. Is there's this notion that college football is a regional sport. Well, my counter to that, and then you guys know where I'm from. I live up in Ohio.
Yeah.
College football is a regional sport dominated by one region since the BCS era. So I think the Big Ten's trying to make some moves to counter that. And that's what you should do. You can't just – if the Big Ten sat around and watched the SEC dominate college football for the next 30 years and didn't do anything about it, you'd have to wonder what they were doing.
Yeah. You said games and the week 0 stuff. I mean, I'm glad that there are games on, but there's not a whole lot that really grabs my attention. I mean, Vanderbilt, Hawaii, okay, fine. We've got a Big Ten conference game with Northwestern and Nebraska playing in Ireland. Oh, okay, fine and good. But there are some matchups in week 1, that weekend that starts Thursday, September 1st, and then rolls all the way through Labor Day night that really grab my attention. Maybe none more so than Florida and Utah. First-year head coach Billy Napier in Gainesville, Utah picked to win the Pac-12. What do you see when you look at that matchup in Gainesville where it's going to be hot on opening day?
Probably the best game of the weekend. I mean, Ohio State, Notre Dame is going to get the biggest rating, and that's where I'll be in week 1, and that makes sense. But the reality is the spread on that game is 14.5 points, and a lot of people will probably take the Buckeyes. Utah, Florida is a huge piece of the college football puzzle. You guys will appreciate it down there. I looked it up. Florida has not lost a home opener in the Swamp since 1989 against Ole Miss. I don't know who Ole Miss's quarterback was then. You guys probably do. I
think it was John Darnell, but I'll have to double-check that.
Yeah, there you go. You could maybe throw that on a trivia question or something down there. But Utah's favored. And Utah, if they go down there and win, I think you start to take them seriously as, okay, if they can do that and then get through the Pac-12 with maybe one loss, they can be in the playoffs because that's that non-conference game that always catches the College Football Playoff Committee's attention in November.
Yeah. Yeah, you're absolutely right. So Michael Borky and Brian Haydad have brushed me aside a little bit as I've said, I don't know if I would just chalk this one up as a win. Cincinnati at Arkansas strikes me as a game that has the potential to be really fascinating. Now, I know Cincinnati lost a ton off of that team from a year ago, but I kind of feel like Luke Fickell has built not just a team but a program, and this is not one that Arkansas, in my opinion, can take lightly at all.
No, they can. That's going to be a game. Yeah, because, I mean, Cincinnati's recruited well, and they did. I mean, you're asking a lot for all that they lost to the NFL to go win, go there and win against what I think is going to be a pretty darn good Arkansas team. But, yeah, they'll compete. I mean, I don't see them getting blown out, and I absolutely see them making that a four-quarter game. It'll depend on the new quarterback. They do like Prater, the new quarterback that they have there, and they'll try to keep it on the ground and play tough defense. So I think KJ Jefferson presents them a problem, though. He is one of those guys that just quietly had a great outstanding season last year.
A game that is more important for the team that is listed as the visitor and very much will be the visitor in New Orleans. Florida State and LSU. How big is this game for Mike Norvell, and how big of a chance do you give Florida State to roll into the Superdome and actually get that win?
Well, as my editor pointed out to me today, so you take a look at that Sunday, who's playing the Florida State and LSU on ESPN? Deion Sanders and Jackson State. So, I mean, think about that from Florida State's perspective. You sit there, you're going to watch Deion and Jadir Sanders and Travis Hunter, and they're probably going to dominate and look good in their opener. And then you turn around and if LSU beats Florida State, Mike Norvell's not going to be very happy, or they're not going to be happy with him. So, yeah, that is a good opener. I mean, because Mike Norvell and has some time to establish it. LSU's this team that predictions range from they might not make a bowl to, could compete for the SEC West because they always have the talent to do that. And it's BK's opener, too. That's going to be a fun game.
Yeah. There's another one, and this is a little bit off the radar nationally, but locally there are a lot of people that are looking at it. A year ago, Mississippi State went to the Liberty Bowl in Memphis, and they lost. This year, Mississippi State hosting Memphis. I feel like nationally, Mississippi State is flying under the radar. Will Rogers returning, a ton of passing yards. They've got more back offensively and defensively than I feel like most people are giving them credit for. Maybe not so much on the game with Memphis, but just a general thought on Mississippi State going into this year.
Yeah, I mean, having Rodgers in that offense is a difference maker. I mean, you kind of know what you're going to get, as in they're going to throw it a lot and, play in some wild games. You wonder how they can sustain that from a week-to-week basis. I mean, the thing is, when you break down the SEC West in general, if I told you Mississippi State could finish anywhere from 3rd to 7th, I think I'd be right. I don't know that they can get as high as 2nd, but I know that they could throw some scares into some people and got a favorable home schedule, and that it starts with beating Memphis. Though obviously they played that was one of the more wild games of the year last year, and I don't want to repeat that.
No, and Mississippi State fans would also hope that they have a different officiating crew than they have a year ago. There are a lot of people that have pointed that there are a lot of things that went wrong in that game. Officiating certainly falls into one of those things. Bill, you're a lot like Brian Haydad. I don't think you like all the other stuff nearly as much as you like the games themselves.
No, I like both, but I mean, I'm at that point now where, when you get 3 weeks away from the season, I'm happy to talk about realignment and conference shuffling and all those things. But at the end of the day, once the season starts, I'm so happy because those 15 weeks or so, you're watching games and you're and we're arguing about the things that matter to me is my team's better than yours. And that's why I got into college football in the first place, and it should be a lot of fun.
It certainly is going to be a fun season. Bill, always